prosperity. But you know, that also describes another place too. It's called Texas. The United States of America is not that. The United States of America is a political and economic institution embodied by the federal government who was set there and created to protect those things that we believe are America and American values, but whose course has become one that seeks to destroy those very values and crush people like us who will not compromise our principles into dust. And so we are at that weird spot, the place where generations from now are going to look back at this moment and judge us about what we do right here and right now. You understand, if history is being written right now, that some child somewhere, 3 generations from now, are going to crack open a history book, or on a computer, I guess, right? Do they still have history books? I don't know. But they're going to crack open a history book and they're going to look back. How are we going to be remembered? Are we going to be the generation that lost freedom, that lost liberty, that lost independence? Or are we going to be the ones that preserve it for the entire world? Are we going to be the ones who reach out and reclaim our right of self-government and make Texas a nation among nations again and set the standard for everyone else? Politicians that hear this issue will tell you, I believe that Texas should lead and not leave. But I'm telling you that Texas leads by standing up for who we are and especially for our right of self-government. By standing as a nation among nations. Now, how do we do it?
Take a stand.
It's quite simple. I say it's simple, but it'll be the hardest thing you ever did. Do you want to know?
Yes, sir.
There was a lot of silence in the crowd. I'm not sure. I feel like we might have gotten outvoted.
Take a stand.
We do have to take a stand. But you understand that everything here, the gateway for making this happen, is getting a vote on Texas independence. To put the question on a ballot for Texans to answer. You see, Article 1, Section 2 is very clear. All political power is inherent in who?
People.
And they have the inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish. It's ultimately a question that must be put to the people and answered by the people. And how do we get those people? Well, we have to start immediately having the conversations and stop acting like we're in the minority. We have to no longer tolerate being marginalized by the opposition. You see, here's what that 66% number means. That means I could walk out of this door, you could blindfold me, spin me around 3 times, let me throw a rock, and I could hit a Texas supporter, and I might get another one with the ricochet. That's what it means. That means we are everywhere. So friends, all of those that answered at the very beginning that you were ready for Texas, welcome to the majority. You're on the winning side. I wasn't fishing for applause, but that was cool. I'm good with it. You notice after doing this for so long, I've got a bit of a sense of humor. It's about the only thing that can keep you sane after having to go through all the garbage that we've had to go through over the years. But here's the bottom line. We have to get this to a vote, and the way that we get this to a vote is right through the Texas legislature. All roads lead there. Because this isn't just some ridiculous notion that we can go, everybody scroll on a cocktail napkin and it's done. We have to have a vote. There is a process. And until the people vote on this, then it's just an idea. All the debate is academic, but we move forward when we have a vote. The way that we get a vote, a legitimate vote, is to have legislation passed. And I'm going to tell you what, we've got a lot of people in the Texas legislature right now that do not want that to happen. They don't want it to happen. But guess what? There's one thing that politicians, particularly a lot of those that are in Austin right now, their number one concern for many of them is whether or not they're going to be reelected. You have to put pressure. Again, one of the beautiful things of that 2-year study, and one of the things that we saw with Brexit in particular, was that if you exert the right pressure and enough of it to the point that you could potentially cause a bunch of people to lose their seats, you can ultimately get your vote. Know that the Scottish independence referendum never polled above 30% before they called the referendum. Brexit never polled above 40% before they got their referendum. We're at 66%. All we want is the vote. And they have to hear you, and they have to hear you loud and clear, that you simply want to exercise your right to vote on this issue. And let the chips fall where they may. You simply want your rights under Article 1, Section 2. And if not, then you know what you have to do in the next cycle. Because let me ask you this. If you had an elected official that did not respect your right to keep and bear arms, or your freedom of speech, or your freedom of religion, would you ever cast a vote for them again?
No.
Well, you need to treat your right of self-government the same way. And you need to make it known. Beyond that, the process is quite simple. Nothing happens immediately after we have that vote, because I know that when we have the vote, we're going to win. The numbers are there, the people are there, everything is in place. But beyond that, nothing happens the next day. Why is that? Because we don't want there to be a bunch of disruption. We want there to ultimately be a process, and we want every one of you to be involved in that process. We don't want the same people that dug their heels in, that kept us from so long from getting this vote, to be in control of it. You have to be heard. And so it becomes a process. Now the good news is the ball is in our court. That process takes as long or as short as we let it, as we need it to be. But at the end of it, what we get is we get a government that looks like us, a government that represents us, a government of a sovereign, self-governing, independent nation of Texas, and one that, in my estimation, is long overdue. So, for those of you that may still be on the fence, that may be unconvinced that we can actually pull this thing off, let me tell you a little something. Texas is indeed the 9th largest economy in the world. We overpay $103 to $160 billion annually into the federal system. When people say, what are you going to do with that federal money? I say, well, we're going to keep it here, and we're going to do things like eliminate the property tax. They say, how are you going to fund your government? I say, quite well. Because with that $103 to $160 billion that we no longer have to send to Washington, D.C., to be sent off to places like California and Chicago and New York City and all of these places for their failed social programs and social experiments, we'll be able to take care of things like securing our border and setting up a sensible immigration policy. And they say, well, how are you going to pay for a military? Quite simply the way that every other country around the world pays for their military. And let me tell you, our military is going to know how to pop a balloon.
Amen.
You see, there are a lot of Texicans out there. I'm a Texican, right? There are a lot of folks out there that wonder, you know, like Dandy Don Meredith said, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we don't have a Merry Christmas, right? They want to what if this thing to death. But for me, it's a simple proposition. You pull out a globe and you spin it around and you put your finger on any landmass that's not Antarctica and realize those people have already figured out all those things with far less than we've got. We've got the people. We've got the economy. We've got the natural resources. We've got everything that all of those countries wish they had. If we can't figure it out, then who can? Who can? I put it to you that Texas is poised now better than it's ever been for independence. Texas is ready for independence. We are primed, and we are on a knife's edge. As I said earlier, I believe that this is an existential crisis for us. We win, history will remember us kindly. We fall, and history may not remember Texas at all. That's what's at stake, folks.
Amen.
So, as I said, for those of you that are on the bubble, if my remarks about the excellence of our homeland here did not sway you, I will put it to you this way. I want you to imagine for a moment that Texas was already a self-governing independent nation. Another nation among nations, that we were already there. And we had control over our own border policy and our own immigration policy. We had control over our own monetary policy, and we had our own currency and our own tax policies. We had our own military and national defense policies. We had our own embassies and passports. We had everything that 200 other self-governing independent nations around the world has. And instead of talking about Texas, we were talking about whether we should give up our control and join the Union. Knowing everything you know about the federal government today, would you vote to join the Union? Well, if you wouldn't vote to join, then why would you ever tolerate staying one moment longer than you had to? You see, there is no reason or rationale. There is no reason for us to continue to give that control to a bunch of bureaucrats that do not know us, do not care about us, and frankly, in many instances, hate us. We have an absolute opportunity right now to reclaim our right of self-government and govern ourselves and not abrogate it to 2.5 million unelected federal bureaucrats, or to President Puddin' Pop, or to an unelected and unaccountable federal judiciary. We have the absolute right. We have the ability. The timing is right. And as my dad used to say when we would play dominoes, study long, study wrong. If we wait too long, it may be so difficult. The difficulties increase with time, and there is a sense of urgency. And so tonight, I leave you as we get ready. I'll be taking your questions for a while, because I know some of you probably have some. Trust and believe I've heard every single one of them. What's going to happen to my Social Security? What are we going to do about a military? What's going to happen to my insert name of sports team here? I've heard every single one of them. But at the end of the day, once you get your questions answered, it's not just a matter of scratching that itch. It's a matter of what you're going to do when you leave here. You see, I may have done this for 20 plus years, but I am one person, and I'm not anything special. It's all political power is inherent in the people. Not all political power is inherent in the person, or the politician, or the pollster, or the pundit, or propagandist masquerading as media. It's all political power is inherent in the people, but what good is that power if you do not exercise it?
Amen.
So you must leave here tonight. If you answered yes, that you're ready for Texas, you have to move out of here tonight with action in your minds and a love for Texas independence in your heart. Number one, we have to be organized. Outside of the two major political parties, the TNM is the single largest political advocacy organization in Texas, and there is a reason for that. Because we know that we must connect independence-minded people with one another for structured and disciplined action. To know what to do, when to do it, and be able to communicate with one another, because keeping us separate is how the opposition wins. And if we're going to overcome that, we have to connect. So before you leave tonight, whether you think you've already done it or not, I want you to make a beeline to that table in the back, and I want you to meet some of the local leadership, and I want you to pledge your support so that we can connect, so that we can communicate, so that we can organize, and so that we can win. And then once you've done that, the next thing you need to do, and I know many of you have already done this, but do it more. You need to let your state rep and your state senator know in no uncertain terms that you expect a vote on Texas independence in November. You see, we can't beg for our rights. We cannot beg for our inalienable rights. On occasion, when those people out there would want to take them from us, we must demand them. Am I right?
Amen.
Now, I'm not saying be rude, but I am saying you better fight like the third monkey on the ramp to Noah's Ark and the rain has started. You do those two things tonight, and those actions will propel us ever closer to Texas independence. And we will be on pace to fulfill what I consider almost prophetic words of Sam Houston. You know, when Sam Houston, when Texas joined the Union, there were people that were not happy about Texas joining the Union. Sam Houston believed that we should. But he acknowledged the feelings that those people had. That Texas could have made a go. They could have overcome the difficulties and could have been a nation among nations. And this is what he told them. He said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. Friends, I do believe that Texas is going to lift its head and stand among the nations, and my question to you tonight is, will you stand with her? I want to thank you for your time.